Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life,
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the city of Fort Worth, news, politics, business, trends, and beyond. Tarrant County, North Texas, Texas politics. What's up, Jimmy? How's life?
Good.
Did you survive the tornado?
Yeah, survived that. That was a wild 30 minutes, you know, like it just get out of nowhere. It's like, it's a little bit windy, but things are calm. Then all of a sudden, like the power's flickering, like it looks like your trees are going to fall over. And then it just kind of disappears, turns back into a light rain. Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
But was this a classic Weather Channel overscare that then wasn't as big as everyone made it sound like? Or do you feel like the weather people did a good job?
I mean, I thought it was going to last longer. Like all day, it felt like we were on like 5, 6, 7 hours of tornado alert. And it was, you know, a 30-minute storm until the worst of it passed. But that was still pretty gnarly.
It got hella dark. It was,
it
felt like the underworld was taking over.
Yeah, kind of foreboding for what's to come for the spring. But, I mean, what followed it has been a great second half of the week and weekend of weather.
Heck yeah.
Been awesome hanging outside. Makes me wish that we had even more, like, developed parks and green spaces that are walkable around the city.
Yeah. Well, this episode, the big story is going to be kind of the housing updates, affordable housing updates that the city has had. But let's go ahead and dive into the short stories. You wanted to bring us in? I'm trying to figure out. I feel like usually this would have been like a win or a loss, but it was just too good to like not bring up and have a little bit more of a discussion on.
Yeah, so Fort Worth City Council candidates' quote-unquote wokeness parody card game causes some of staffers to quit. So District 7 candidate Caleb Backholm said fears that his card game Wokelandia could be used in attack mailers caused some of his professional staff to walk off his campaign. The game is a satire of so-called quote-unquote woke culture. Players compete to get the most oppression points.
Oh my gosh.
You lose oppression points by having the wrong identity. You get oppression points by having the right identity, said his brother and co-creator. His response on Facebook, Jesus, I can't believe I'm about to like read these words in this order. The first problem is that the game includes a KKK character. That's a problem because, well, actually, no one is sure exactly how that's a problem. It just is. Excuse me, sir? You made a KKK character a main character in your little game. You don't see how that's a problem? He says, it means I'm probably the founder of the KKK or maybe a top recruiter or I used to work as Hitler's barber or something really bad anyway. All people who create games with a KKK character are super bad people. And honestly, I feel comfortable with that being the only factual statement in your Facebook post is that if you create a game with a KKK character, you are in fact a bad person.
Yeah, so like I mean like I wish I could bring the audio in for you guys, but
You know you're not woke enough, but you don't know why. Not that long ago, being a good person just meant treating people well. Now, you have to believe that men can get pregnant, speech is violence, and white people are racist. What are the rules of wokeness? Who made them? And why are they constantly changing? If you've ever asked any of these questions, you need Wokelandia. It's America's favorite new card game that makes the rules of wokeness fun for the whole family.
And love makes a family. You don't need moms and dads to make a family. In fact, you might be better off without the dads altogether with all that toxic masculinity.
The first person to 100 oppression points wins. You get oppression points by having the right identity. You lose oppression points by having the wrong identity. If you're stuck with the wrong identity, you can make up for it by virtue signaling. You could take your kids to a drag show, cut off your family because of who they voted for, or fake a hate crime.
It doesn't matter that the hate crime didn't actually happen. The point is, it could have.
Obviously, it's hard to win if you're a straight white Christian male. But the good thing is, in Wokelandia, your identity can change.
I'm actually curious how their sales are. Actually, like I'm interested from just a business side. Like this actually seems like it has to be going well for them because like at the end of the day, District 7 is Firestone's district, and that district. This might turn some of that crew on.
Yeah, it might get them out to vote.
I know. I feel like he just got a couple people by the rules of wokeness, and he bought some fans. Even though some of his kudos to his professional staff leaving. Like I would be surprised that would be like he hasn't any thoughtful people who would get offended to this. Like
yeah,
like that's kind of
considering
nice.
you've already like signed on to work. I agree with you. Like. Hats off to them for walking away.
But I mean, I feel like the topic of wokeness, I have not come to a clear, articulate opinion of my feelings around just how that word has just gotten destroyed, and then how now it's such a clickbait. I feel like you see it everywhere, the word woke, about something because it's clickable to a lot of people too. And so it's just like, I don't know. I feel like I will have a better pod about this, but yeah, this is sad.
Yeah, this is the type of person that we have running for Fort Worth City Council.
Yeah, like District 4 and District 7 doesn't have anyone to me that I'm like, wow, I'm glad there's an impressive, like super impressive candidate running. Like.
And granted, like we have talked about so many times, you have to be comfortable working a more than full-time job for $20,000 and somehow being able to afford that, do whatever other full-time job you have, or, be flexible around the schedule of when council meetings are. Like, we have gatekept being a city councilor so well that Wokelandia is funding people being able to afford to be a city councilor.
It's his campaign strategy. This is how he's getting the donations. Get $50, get a set of signed Wokelandia cards. Oh man, it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a white man, but it is a tough. I feel like this is just expedited due to. I don't know, like it's a form of them showing like that they have oppression or victimization by, if you're a white man, you lose the game. Like that part, you remember the commercial? Yeah. It's like, you have like, if you're a white, straight Christian man, that's like a negative 30 points or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like we do live in a world, like, I don't know how you feel, but like me and my wife always talk about this. Like the person who I'm most afraid of in an elevator, like, is not like, I bet like back in the day it was like the stereotype black guy in a hoodie, but to me now it's like a white country dude with a red hat. Like that's who I'm like, or a sketchy white young guy who looks like he might shoot something up. So it's like we live in a world today where it's a white man we're afraid of, where before it was like a minority. And so like these white guys making these white games are like, I don't know.
They're trying to hold on to the good old days as long as they can.
Yeah. And like this is their coping of realizing that we are more afraid of you than we are of me or people who live where I live. I am more afraid of these people who will spend the time thinking that this was a good idea.
Yeah. I wonder Wokelandia needs a booth set up at CPAC going on right now.
This would sell like hotcakes. This would sell like, honestly, dude, don't run for District 7. Your game is a better viable option. Like I think if we have to look at your trajectory as a career, Caleb, like I think you have a better chance of being famous by this game and being successful financially with this game than you do at running for District 7. If I was your campaign manager, it sounded like that person left. I'm here to help. Just drop out of the race and focus. If you focus your time on this game, I think you can have a viable product. And that now to the next shark.
Well, let's move on before we
Give this guy
start
2
saying
minutes
anything
credit.
too stupid.
Alrighty. So
Talking about city council, this week there was a little bit more of a contentious meeting than we get sometimes, and a lot of it was over council proposals. So basically, to get something on the docket for a city council meeting, previously you have had to have 2 signatures, so like you and one fellow city councilor to bring it up. And now they're moving that to 3 in the current format, and I believe it'll be 4 once we're expanded to 11 seats after this coming election. And things got a little bit testy going back and forth. A couple council members felt like they were a little bit blindsided by this, that it should have come up at their work session before it came up at city council meeting, which is funny because this whole thing is kind of about people not being blindsided by things like that. But advocates for it were saying that it aligns us more with what other large cities are doing. I think Chris Nettles had a one-liner of like, if we're trying to make ourselves like other large cities, like we keep pushing the ball down the road when it comes to police oversight and other things. Like, we're not consistent in trying to be like other big cities across the board. But it also comes along with when you do propose something, when you want to have something come onto the docket, you have to have a fiscal statement ready of how do we pay for it. And if you listen to our interview with Dr. Jared Williams a few weeks ago, this kind of feels like it is coming in almost like direct contrast to his proposal regarding the curfew and protecting our teenagers. But two, he says, like, I'm not trying to propose a final thing here. Like, what we're trying to do is put this forward and then figure out how much it would cost. I already said, like, we don't allocate resources very well to city councilors. We don't give them funds for departments of people to help figure out what the cost of these things are going to be. So it seems like we're going to kind of spin our wheels a little bit as far as like dedicating resources to figuring out costs of things that might not even come into a city council meeting. I don't know. It was like a little bit confusing. Maddie debriefed it and explained it a little bit on her little post city council podcast. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it slows down. To me, the fear would be the slowing down of new ideas and innovation. Like, if I now have to get 3 people create a financial statement as well, yes, I see the efficiency perspective for them, that they're now time in a meeting's more productive, but now loosely creative and innovative opportunities and faster ideas. You limit speed, and speed is very important to modernizing. I mean, that's what startups are all about. And so this just takes, to me, a fear of like you're double downing in bureaucracy and slowness for efficiency. And I don't see how this makes us a bigger city. I guess I don't know the history on this, like how this works, but
I think it's also interesting, like, right now you need 5 votes for something to pass. We're getting up to 3 signatures on the thing. Like, we're getting pretty close to just like getting everybody that we know is going to vote for it to
and I got 11.
sign on. Right.
Yeah.
So even then, when that goes up to 4
Yeah.
and you need 6 votes, like,
Yeah.
you're still basically 2/3 of the way there. It almost feels like you're only going to bring things to the table now that you know are going to get passed, instead of being able to bring things up that you
lead to discussion.
lead to discussion that like the city needs to talk about. I enjoyed that it was argumentative. Like, that's something that we talked about how Fort Worth City Council and Fort Worth in general needs to learn how to disagree and have productive conversations better. So I enjoyed that it ended up as a 5-4 or 4-4-1 vote or something right in there, and that there was some arguing.
Yeah. No, we'll see. I mean, to me, anytime we harp the whole financial, fiscal responsibility stuff, to me, it's stuck on the small townness of Fort Worth. Like, honestly, our fiscalness is why we aren't competing with Frisco. It's the reason why we're not competing with South Lake. Like, we're not even the most investing forward city in Tarrant County. It's like every time we try to harp about how responsible we are, it just shows how uninvested and like we are compared to other people, like in other cities. And so, like, if we want to continue to tout that mantra, we'll always be the big city that feels like a small town because we never operated like a trendy city with growth. So it's like the same people who tout fiscal conservative are the same, people who say we're innovative and growing and investing, but we're getting dusted by other people.
Yeah.
So,
well, last short story, we are kind of going to continue talking about city council and upcoming plans. Right now, Fort Worth is working on its comprehensive plan. It's basically already kind of set in stone for 2023, 2024. But as we look forward to 2025 and beyond, Fort Worth wants to make sure that people have their voices heard on what is the comprehensive plan for Fort Worth. So what is it? The plan reflects Fort Worth's goals, policies, strategies, and programs that will help achieve the city's stated mission of building strong and safe communities and developing a strong economy. It's basically the mission statement or the plan that comes out of the mission statement that helps guide reviewing zoning cases, budget priorities, capital improvement programs, at annexations, and development standards. So communities of color are skeptical that their voices are going to actually be heard when it comes to the comprehensive plan, but it seems like the city is trying to launch a campaign to engage the public about what we need Fort Worth's long-term priorities and guidance to look like. So right now, kind of the timeline of changes is that this month, council is expected to vote on the 2023 plan. Then this summer, the city hires a consultant to lead public engagement and begins meetings. Then next March, council votes on the 2024 plan with small changes. And then 2025 is kind of where the reboot is supposed to happen. I don't know. How did you feel about this? Do you think that people's voices are actually going to be heard when it comes to making changes to the plan moving forward?
One of our, I feel like, committed listeners said, quote, this is the least thing we pay attention to as people that we should. And I guess it's because we don't pay attention to it because we don't think our voices will be heard. And so I guess, like, it's kind of to me, this is such a hard story to talk about because I'm like, my innate stance or feeling is like, oh yeah, this doesn't matter. It's like the police oversight committee stuff when all that was in the news and people were like, oh, we're going to do this stuff. And now look at us today. It doesn't matter. And this kind of fills in that category, but it sounds like people are getting excited that we should have our opinions and we should actually show up to these things and we should advocate. Is that how you, like, are you more positive or negative on this?
I'm more negative. And I think that's the cycle, right? Is like people don't think their voices are heard, so then they don't go out and vote. It becomes harder to mobilize, so then it's easier for people in power to just maintain the structures that already exist. Like, I think that's a cycle that Fort Worth has placed itself into for a long time. I'm hopeful that voices will be heard, but even still, like, talking about District 5 was kind of like the centerpiece of a lot of this, because the Echo Lake area is, or Echo Heights is a like major industrial zone, and a lot of the residents are having issue with that, and it kind of just seems like that development is going to continue to happen regardless of what they say. So I think that that's a community especially that feels like their voice isn't heard. And it kind of seems like there's not going to be much change with that, especially as we continue to try, as a city, you know, it feels like we're very all in on more industrial development as opposed to like tech startup development.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm pessimistic. At least they're talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that Echo Heights is now going to be in the new District 11. So when we do have that District 11 debate, it'd be interesting to hear their take on, you know, the panel that we're going to have. So have their maybe take on this. This could be maybe a subject or a question. And how do we understand our involvement in the comprehensive plan?
Yeah. The new District 11 map is wild. The more, like,
Yeah.
I didn't think that much about it when it was coming out, but the more you look at it, it's like, man, there's some weird ways some of the districts are drawn, but you look at who is in District 11 now, and you're like, wow, you guys tied that in tight.
Yeah, no, and that was like, we were in the Hempville area, me and my wife, the other day. I was like, yo, over here is voting with us over there. Like, isn't that crazy? It's kind of not mind-blowing. Like, when you look at how culturally and community-wise, like, what Hempville residents deal with compared to what Eastside residents deal with are completely different things. And now we're together voting for the same leader in, like, the district.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Off to the big story.
Yeah. So there were a few different stories about housing this week that we wanted to cover, and first we'll start with. Do you want to start with more of like a positive side or a negative side?
Let's do the positive.
Okay. So Fort Worth has offered Southwestern Seminary $11 million to buy dorms for families of people experiencing homelessness, and for people who have been victims of sex trafficking. So the Southwestern Seminary was selling a chunk of their dorms, like 140 units, and the city's Housing Finance Corporation offered $11 million to purchase the property. It's a public-private partnership, so there's a few different people coming to the table. One Safe Place is offering, I believe, $5 million, and the Tarrant County Samaritan House is offering $4.1 million. But altogether, like, these units could be ready to go for people to move into come this summer, and it is I would say a really big win for the city when it comes to affordable housing and housing a lot of people experiencing homelessness here.
Yeah, I mean, the Rainwater, Morris, Eamon Carter, and Sid Richardson and Palos Foundations will also contribute $1.9 million. Shout out to Elizabeth Beck, and I mean, this is a huge success under her belt. Yeah, I mean, let's just say District 4 and District 7 doesn't have an Elizabeth Beck, qualified, smart, active taking group of people. Whoever's going to take those seats, I feel like is going to really make city council, a tough, not better. Like, I just don't feel like we have like the Jared Williams, even the Michael Cranes. Like, give me a Michael Crane in 7 or 4. Like, like someone with, like, I feel like some talent, but maybe we'll see more, maybe the Wokelandia guys just stuck on minds, but maybe there's some like actual good, conscious humans in there. But shout out to Elizabeth Beck for this, for doing this. That's a big win.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that Fort Worth has continued to win at over the last few years. And data supports that our population of people experiencing homelessness is decreasing relative to the national rate. And like, we are figuring out ways to provide housing. And I think it's something that Mayor Parker is doing a good job of. Like, she gets that homelessness is a housing problem. It's not a mental, or it's not a drug problem, or mental illness is the reason that they're homeless. Like, those problems exist within the homeless community the same way they exist within the housed community. But the root issue of homelessness is housing. And that's something that we as Fort Worth, I think, have taken really good hold of and are pushing towards providing more and more housing. So I thought this was a really cool thing to see come up, and it seems like pretty swift action to get all of these organizations and communities together to make this public-private partnership happen.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Like, I think there's the data doesn't, the place, the states with the most mental illness aren't the states with the most homeless people. The states with the highest drug overdoses aren't the states with the most homeless situation. The only thing that homelessness aligns with is housing costs. And so when housing goes up and it's unaffordable, homelessness increases. There was a crazy stat in The Economist, about how, few Americans lived on the streets in the early post-war period because housing was cheaper. Back then, only 1 in 4 tenants spent 30% of their income on rent, compared with today, it's 1 out of 2. And the evidence suggests that 10% rise in housing costs is a pricey, where 8% jump in homelessness were correlated.
Yeah, I would hate to see the stat of if you took out people over 40. I mean, I imagine that for people under 40 and even people under 30, the percent spending more than 30% of their income on rent has to be a scary number. I don't even want to estimate what it is, but when we're talking like a 1-bedroom apartment in Fort Worth is running like $1,500, that's tough to think about, how many people are spending more than 30% of their income on housing.
Yeah, we got to figure it out. I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, what's happening to our housing market is criminal. But how do you explain when only 26% of the new homes bought were bought by first-time home buyers? 40% of people, 30-year-olds or whoever are buying a home, like, have to have help from their families to buy it. Like, I just don't know how we bridge the difference between, like, yes, where there's affordable housing problem, but then there's also just like a housing problem.
Right. And
So it's like,
we're cheap relative to the rest of the country. So like, if people want a city living experience or a metro living experience and they want to do it affordably, like, the best place you can look right now is DFW, relative to major metros around the country. So I think that's even a tough part for where Fort Worth sits right now, is that there's really only growth ahead for the housing market, which makes it harder and harder for people potentially already here that are just kind of skating by to continue to afford it, especially because so much of our tax revenue, so much of our tax revenue comes from property taxes. And no matter how much you decrease the property tax rate, because of how much we are growing and appreciating, like, you don't have a hold on property taxes. That's why we pay a higher marginal tax rate than people in California do, despite claims to the otherwise.
Yeah, no, I find out, like, I have friends who have, like, way nicer lives and homes than I do, and they live in California, but then I hear what they pay their mortgage. I'm like, that's not that much for how much. If you bought that nice house in Texas, your expense would be so much more here because of property taxes and all that.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So let's go to the bad news. You want to talk about I'm interested. You said good news or bad news first. So
yeah, it's kind of like bad news that I would say got resolved pretty quickly, but to me paints maybe a tough picture of like what is to come with the makeup of the new Tarrant County Commissioner's Court with Tim O'Hare, Manny Ramirez on board. They basically said this money that was earmarked for revitalizing for creating some affordable housing out of a hotel on Las Vegas Trail, basically said the county's not going to put up this money for it anymore, throughout the fiscal responsibility term, and said that we're nixing these funds. I'll definitely give props to Michael Crane and the city for coming quickly to say, hey, we have money set aside that we can use to be partners in this. If we put up, $2 million, will you still get us most of the rest of the way? I think there's still like a million or $1.5 million gap in what was originally earmarked for the project, but it seems like it's still going to happen. But in the revitalization process of Las Vegas Trail, Tarrant County had set aside, I believe, $12 million to set up some affordable housing units, and the Tarrant County commissioners, came to a vote to their, basically said that they weren't going to do that. But now under their new agreement, Tarrant County will provide $8 million. Fort Worth will provide $2 million, and Philanthropies will give over $1 million for the revitalization project. It just makes me a little bit pessimistic of what is to come in this commissioner's court and what projects we already have planned, and maybe even have the ball rolling on that they're going to pull the rug out under on in the name of fiscal responsibility.
You know what's funny is when you said that this was like you were worried, like you want the good or the bad. I was reading this story, and if you don't know who Manny Ramirez is and you're just a normal person reading this, you're like, oh, look at Tarrant County being like progressive stewards of money, or like progressive stewards of investing in people. And even look at these quotes. Like, I thought Manny had some good quotes here. Look, we couldn't be more excited. The hotel will provide permanent supportive housing and help these families get back on their feet. Like, he even has a quote in here. It really is an environment that feeds on the vulnerable. So like, he is talking about people who are dealing with issues with poverty and not like using the whole, oh, hard work or, hey, get on their feet. Like, he's actually, to me, sounds somewhat empathetic about situations people deal with on Las Vegas Trail, which was a very surprising piece because I know who this Manny Ramirez person is and the like other people he courts with. So like, are they going to say like, here's like, I could totally see them being like, oh, here's a classic. Like, we actually did something that is progressive, but now the progressives are attacking us that we didn't do it the right way.
Yeah. And it like, these quotes are such a flip of what he said earlier in the week. So like, this $11.6 million proposal would have been funded solely through the county's COVID-19 relief funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. This isn't even money that is coming directly from us as taxpayers to the county. This is American Rescue Plan Act funds, and they expressed concern that fully funding the project could be seen as gifting tax dollars to a private nonprofit entity. How often do we gift tax dollars to for-profit entities to try and get them to come to the area to, I don't know, you could call like not allowing competition for our trash and recycling service, gifting dollars to a for-profit entity. So and then you like kind of put on this scene only to then come back and be like, yeah, we saved $3 million as the county. Like, what is the county budget that you're looking at $3 million and thinking that that was worth putting up a scene for on funds that didn't even directly come from us paying taxes to the county? It's just like the polar opposite of what he is saying in here of like, we can't be gifting things to people, but then once you save $2 million, you're like, yeah, okay, like, it's okay for us to do this. It just doesn't make any sense. And to me, anytime you hear fiscal responsibility thrown out, it always comes, or gifting, it always comes when it's in relation to helping people. It never, and investing in the community. It never comes in relation to, oh, we set up this $700 million tax fund for the police department. There's no oversight to it. Anytime someone brings up police oversight in any way, we shoot it down. But when it comes to an extra $3 million for affordable housing in Las Vegas Trail that we're trying to develop, now we need to put on this show, throw this scene to act like we're being fiscally responsible.
This was going to be my loss, but yeah, Panther Island receives an additional $20 million, leaves $98 million to fully fund the project. You know, we don't talk about fiscal responsibility when we're trying to blow up and build an island in the middle of our downtown for some random reason. What's fiscal about, you know, building an island in your downtown? Because you think it would look cool. Like, kind of like, it's just, yeah. And so it's crazy. I totally get it. It's just interesting that if you are just a person reading that story and you don't know like what's being taught, you'd be like, oh, look at Tarrant County being, you know, like if you were someone from a Democratic city or something, like you'd be like, oh, look at all these like Democrats making the city like more affordable housing. It's like, no, actually this is being done by the people we're all worried about, but they're showcasing like, oh, look at what we did, even though, like you said, it was American Rescue Plan money anyways, but they're trying to act like they're pandering to us that they're good stewards and they care about affordable housing.
Yeah, and again, like long term, this is a great, like, I'm glad that the city figured it out. I'm glad that, you know, we came to the table and figured out how to make this happen. Like, these are two important projects for the city and its long-term and short-term growth. But just the way that we have gotten there, it makes me a little bit skeptical of what is to come from the new makeup of the commissioner's court.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to, like Michael Crane, you said, another doer in council. You know, that's what we need, doers. If you're going to be a panderer, just like pandering to your base and saying stuff, you know, you're not right for city council. We need doers, you know. Beck, doer. Crane, doer. Jared, a doer. You know, we need doers. And I just don't know if 7 or 4, we'll see who becomes a doer. And 11, we got to figure out who our doer is going to be.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
You ready to move to wins and losses?
Let's make it happen.
My loss, I guess I'll talk about panderers. My loss is more of just like Texas politics. This week, you know, CPAC is going on. We've got a lot of buzz, trigger words being thrown out by the people on stage. But when we look statewide, like Greg Abbott this week basically said that he's going to call as many special sessions as necessary in order to pass the like school voucher program. Like we're well on the road to making Texas public schools as bad as possible. Like we are going to be redirecting plenty of funding towards private and for-profit institutions at the expense of our public schools. And that seems like a very firm thing that's going to happen in this legislative session. Then also like the Texas A&M University system, and the University of Houston systems are making changes after Greg Abbott ordered state agencies to stop considering diversity in their hiring practices. He basically said that all state universities have to remove DE&I statements when it comes to hiring. He basically said it's like illegal for them to hire based on diversity.
The chancellor at A&M said, no university or agency in the A&M system will admit any student nor hire any employee based on any factor other than merit.
Yeah, and like you look at that in a vacuum and you're like, sure, like I want to hire the best people for the job, but that doesn't take into account where people are starting from. Merit's also a really subjective term. Like, you know, you probably think the merits of your friend's kids are, and the, you know, connections you have are better than just some stranger walking in, despite how good their merits might be. I mean, at this point, why do you even have interviews? You know, like you just put your resume on there. Like, yeah. You don't need to talk to the person. Like, you can just create some sort of system to look and say, like I think your resume looks the best, so we're hiring you. Then you get George Santos in Congress.
Yeah. No, totally. I support your loss. My loss, I kind of mentioned as well, as just like the Panther Island, just conversation and how we are funding it, how we talk about financial responsibility, but when it comes to building this island, it's just been no thought, strategic. Like, really, I feel Fort Worth can just, like, the fact that we're seen as this like fiscally responsible city, but yet we're making an island and spending all this money on it. I guess that's the loss. Like, the narrative, like, it's not even that I'm upset, or like the loss is that we shouldn't spend the money on Panther Island. It's just like, it doesn't go with our narrative that we're like this small town, fiscally conservative, responsible. Like, that's what we project. And I guess like the loss is just the in alignment to how we say that to people, but then really acting like the Wild Wild West over here.
Yeah, and it kind of connected for me. There was a story this week about the like North Main area redevelopment. Like, we've talked about how that neighborhood has received funding to try and be revitalized. And like, that revitalization can't really happen until Panther Island is done, because so much of that area is going to become an island. And so like, there's going to be like traffic being rerouted. Like, there's just so much risk in developing a lot of those empty properties that are up there right now, and like properties that have been empty for forever. Like, when you make that drive from the courthouse up to the stockyards down Main, you just look at all these like dilapidated buildings, and like the life that is going to be breathed into there is banking on Panther Island, but it seems like everyone's kind of waiting until that happens to make it financially worthwhile to do so. It kind of just feels like an entire community is being paralyzed,
hostage.
Yeah, until this gets done in like 2030, 2032. Like, it's just already lagging behind the rest of the city, and it feels like I don't know, it just feels like a really tough place for that redevelopment to happen until the whole thing's finished.
Yeah. Well, my win, I'll go with my win, because your win is a little cooler. I mean, mine is cool, but I think I had it as my win last time. But if you haven't had a chance to see Community Frontline's mural on the east side, it is super, super cool and well done. I remember Dante Williams, the president of Community Frontline, when I was over there, him telling me the idea, and I really couldn't visualize what he was saying. He's like, yeah, there's going to be like hands holding together and like all this. I'm like, oh, cool, man. Like, yeah, do what makes you happy. And then like the way it looks now, the mural, it's so beautiful. It's so good. Like the detail in it, the depth. it was really, really well done. And if you haven't had a chance to see the mural on Community Frontlines building, do so.
Absolutely. My win, we're stretching into Arlington, but students at UT Arlington's
Sometimes
College
you got to
of
do that
Ar-
in Fort Worth for
Yeah,
wins, you know? You
exactly.
got to go to Arlington.
Students at UT Arlington's College of Architecture were in a competition for redesigning the bridges crossing over Cooper Street to better connect campus and remind drivers that they are driving through UT Arlington Maverick country. The winning design team drew inspiration from Dallas's Clyde Warren Park and constructed a deck over the busy road that holds green space, social spaces, and paths for pedestrians. They said the group's design also was influenced by UTA's master plan for 2005 to 2020, which also proposed a plaza over Cooper Street. So they were like, well, if they thought about it, it can't be too crazy of an idea. Go to the Fort Worth Report article about this and look at what the design is. Like, it looks amazing. It's creative. It is what areas in North Texas need to feel more pedestrian and consumer friendly, multimodal friendly at that. Both university and city leaders have grappled with safety and campus recognition along Cooper Street. This, I mean, seems like a really great solution to it. So, it seems like this competition was not just for show, but I would love to see UT Arlington and Arlington act on it, because this is a really beautiful idea and just made me excited for what can happen when you put ideas like this in the hands of creative and passionate people like students who, maybe aren't as encumbered by the bureaucracy of having worked in an office or in government for an amount of time, and can really just be kind of let free to come up with creative solutions for our cities.
Yeah, no, super awesome. It's kind of funny. I was actually at a get together and there was a UTA architectural master student there talking about the cool projects they do. Like, one was like keeping the community identity in Trinity Grove. So it seems like a cool little program.
Yeah.
But wait, we didn't give UTA like the green light like we did A&M, who's trying to not hire off a DEI and give them all of downtown. We didn't do that for UTA. We gave it to A&M, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Anyways, beautiful people, if you made it to the end of the 817 podcast, we love you. We thank you. We do enjoy doing this for you, even when we got news weeks like this where it wasn't anything crazy, but I think we got a good pod out of it. And we'll continue to be stewards of good content and reading the news for you. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Now they control your life, control your life. Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Follow us like double tap.